Yes, thank you. Welcome, everyone. I'm Jody Steele. I'm the Director of Distance Education and Instructional Technology. And I have the esteemed pleasure of introducing our facilitators who have led the training of hundreds of faculty in the last year and have done an incredible job, have dedicated so many hours, especially unscheduled hours, to helping faculty and meeting them where they're at. So I wanted to express my deep gratitude for all the work that they've done and share with you that they are not done. We are offering more and more workshops and certification courses as we move into the fall. So Sue Yang is our instructional designer. Jason Thomas teaches biology, and he is one of our facilitators. And is anybody else presenting? It's just the two of you guys, right?
Yep.
Excellent.
And our panelists.
Yes, of course. And our panelists, we have 6 incredible faculty members who have been gracious enough to agree to share the lessons learned with the humility of some of those things that have helped them grow. Because it's often only when we struggle do we grow. So I'm extremely proud of the faculty too. So thank you for joining us. If you have questions, please put them in the chat. And if they're for particular panelists, we'll pass them off to them as well. Thank you.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you for attending our session today. We have a great group of faculty that are participating on our panel, and so I hope that they'll be able to share with you their experience within the past year and be able to share how they've changed and improved their teaching and learning. So just a few announcements here before we get started. This session is being recorded. And so once the recording link is available, we'll provide it here on our Flex page in the virtual hub for faculty as well. We just ask that if you're not speaking, if you could just mute your microphone during the presentation. During the Q&A, you can unmute yourself though. And so for now, just mute your phones. Jason already made the link to this page available in the chat. So feel free to click on that to follow along and access any of the resources that we are going to be sharing then. And so next, I'd like to introduce our panelists. And so I'm going to stop share so that we can see each other. And I'm going to ask each of them to just introduce themselves, and we'll go from there then. So go ahead, whoever wants to go first.
Hello, I'm Kelly Amaral. I teach math. I've been an adjunct at Fresno City College for more than 10 years. I don't know exactly how many, but more than 10. Yeah.
My name is Max Parrish. I teach in the philosophy department, and I've been at Fresno City for 2 years full-time, 1 year as an adjunct. I've taken a lot of online classes as a student, so that's informed my approach to teaching.
I'm Simone Brito. I teach biology. I'm with Jason, same department. I think I was invited to be part of this panel because I just completed the G certification, and I've been taking a lot of the workshops that Sue and Jason have offered.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Rittishauser in history, and I've been full-time going on 22 years now at Fresno City College.
I'm Nikki Vishweshwara, and I teach nursing, and I've been teaching. I first taught with Fresno City back in 2006 and then left to go to the Madera Center, and I've been full-time now since 2019.
my name is Stacy Mimura. Now I know that whenever you see me come up in district emails, it says Stacy Lee, but that's one of those God-given names or parent-given names I do not go by. My name is just Stacy. And so I'm just going to throw that out there. But welcome. I'm with the communication department. I've been teaching at Fresno City since 2007 and as an adjunct, and then became tenured in 2015. So I'm super excited about that. And I'm really excited to be here and hopefully encourage anyone who hasn't done this, they need to do it.
Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Kevin Cooper. I am the chair of the music department, and I teach all levels of guitar classes from beginning to advanced, as well as music appreciation and music fundamentals. And so perhaps my challenges that needed to be overcome online are very specific, but if you don't find them useful in your own teaching, maybe you'll find them entertaining. Thanks for being here.
All right, thank you, everyone. Okay, so I will go ahead and share my screen again. Before we start with the panelists, Jason and I are going to just do brief overviews of some of the programs and sessions that we have available for faculty members to participate in. And the first one that I'm going to cover is the faculty boot camp. And so these were launched back in fall 2020 based around a boot camp theme with different 1-hour exercises and sessions that were designed to help you build your skills in online teaching. And so we limited the sessions to 12 participants, offering multiple sessions throughout the week. And typically these sessions are offered Thursdays and Fridays in the morning and in the afternoon, depending on demand, we may offer more as well too. Each of these sessions has a list of objectives and an outline that we follow and that we've created to cover all of the important content that's necessary. We also align the objectives with the California Virtual Campus Online Education Initiative, CVC OEI course design rubric, which has a standard for online courses and metrics that they would like to have met for it to be a quality online course. Although these sessions do not give you credit for the DE certification, which is a separate thing, they still do provide you skills and knowledge on different tools and pedagogy that you can still use in your teaching. And this could be online or even in face-to-face as we return to campus as well. Just a reminder, the boot camp sessions are available to any Fresno City College faculty member. Adjuncts who do register and attend will be compensated as well too. And we thank Susie Mitzel for coordinating all of that and helping us to take care of all that so that our adjuncts are compensated on time. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Jason, who will talk about the DE certification.
Hey, so like Sue said, the bootcamp sessions don't qualify towards any credit for our distance education certification, but we do have a pathway for you to become DE certified. And so in order to teach online at Fresno City College after the COVID-19 emergency period, it will be a requirement to be fully DE certified in order to teach an online class. And so we have this a 4-part pathway that includes what a lot of you have probably taken part 1. Part 1 is the introduction to course design. So in part 1 of DE certification, it's a 2-week course where we really focus on getting your course modeled in a way that's consistent, easy for students to kind of flow through your course. And we use this, what's called the backwards course design principles to kind of help make sure that all of your assignments and everything are linked up to your course SLOs. For part 2 of DE certification, it's a second 2-week course where we really start to focus on communication. One of the things I appreciate that Max has already said is that he's been he's taken a lot of online classes as a student, and I've done that as well. And communication, I think, is one part that I've seen in early online classes that could have used a lot of work. And thankfully now we have a lot more information on what really successful communication is our online classes. And so the 10-10-10 communication series talks about making that great first impression in your course and maintaining that connection throughout your entire course. For parts 3 and 4, we have actually combined that into a 2-week course. So parts 3 and 4 can be done in 2 weeks. And this is all focused on assessment and universal design. And so for parts 3 and 4, we focus on making our formative and summative assessments and make sure that these formative assessments are linked directly to our course outline of record. We want to try to build our assignments, so we're building our students up to what those high stakes summative assessments are. And then towards the end of that training, we focus strongly on universal design principles. And so we want to make sure to include techniques in our class that are helpful for all of the learners. So we don't only put a focus on accessibility, but we put accessibility when required, but really we want to help all the different learners that are taking our classes. And all of these parts are tied closely to the CVC OEI course design rubric. So the goal is once you finish your DE certification, that your course aligns with that rubric. Lastly, once you make it through all 4 parts of the certification, we ask our instructors that they complete what's called the showcase capstone. The showcase capstone is where our instructors do a little bit of peer review. And so they check out each other's classes, and at the end, they record a short video showing what they're really proud of in their course. Right now is a really unique time to take DE certification, because in the past, when you took a DE certification course, you were in a group of instructors that have never taught online before. Well, that's not true anymore. Now the people who are coming in for DE certification have kind of gone through the trenches for the last about, what is it, a year and a half now. And so there has been some very cool collaboration in these courses and sharing of ideas that I don't think that we probably saw in earlier DE certification courses. And so it's been an incredibly rewarding experience. And I hope that we hear about some of that today. I'm sure that we will. So far, once you make it through all of these steps, you will then be awarded a Badger badge that signifies that you've been fully DE certified to teach at Fresno City College. And we're really proud to say that so far, we have over 100 City College instructors that have gone through this DE certification process within the last year. All right. So let me open up my notes over here real quick. And so at the end of this presentation, we'll go back into the virtual hub for faculty, and we'll talk about where you can sign up for our bootcamp sessions and where you can sign up for our DE certification. But now we want to go ahead and get started on some of these questions for our panelists. And so the way we're going to do questions is we have a list of questions that we want to ask our panelists. We're just going to kind of call on whoever wants to answer these questions. If we get a little bit of silence, I might pick on a couple of names. And so the first question we have today, at the start of the pandemic, we were all forced to move our classes online. We could probably go on and on about the different challenges that existed, but are there any specific challenges that you'd like to discuss? And how did the online trainings help address some of those challenges? Does anyone want to volunteer? Kevin.
Okay. Music presents very specific challenges and unique ones. And so those presented themselves mostly in my guitar performance classes. because it is a class, we often play together, and that really provides the incentive and motivation, the electricity when you are taking your tiny puzzle piece and putting it together with a group. That's what's fun, and that's what's also impossible online. So that was a really big challenge because of latency issues. You just can't, like on a Zoom session like this, all pick up guitars and start to play, or it's a cacophony. So that was a challenge. But then I also teach music appreciation class and music fundamentals class, which is probably most similar to what you all teach, more of a typical academic class. And so I'll talk about that first, perhaps, because I found the challenge is, how do you replace the classroom experience of those informal yet completely necessary moments of assessment, such as the students asking a question in a lecture and you answering the question, discussion, pair sharing, writing activities where there's feedback student to student. This stuff happens during class, and I never even thought about it. It was just such a regular part. But online, short of that summative assessment, that exam or whatever, how do you replace those experiences, those steps moving upward? And so then I just had to create so many more assignments, these smaller building blocks moving up to some eventual goal. And so it just meant more tasks, which I would normally not consider a discussion in a class a task or a graded assignment, but that's what it had to become. And yes, and I would grade it, because in one of these flex days years ago, I learned that students don't do optional, and it's just borne out over and over. So if you have some sort of discussion or something that doesn't have a graded point to it, even though it may be formative, I don't know if that's controversial, but yeah, I'm grading my formative stuff, perhaps to a lesser extent, or else it doesn't get done. So yeah, thanks to discussions and mini assignments and things, I was able to kind of replace those gradual steps.
I'll go next to kind of build on what Kevin has so eloquently discussed. Nursing, we faced some of the same challenges, and one of the classes that we have is our skills lab. And so in ours, we spend a lot of time either demonstrating a skill, or for fourth semester, which is what I teach, ours is simulation. So the course, when it was face-to-face, we had plans of, we had a particular simulation that we were going to run the students through. So when the pandemic hit, all of those assignments that would have called upon the students to come together as a group of 5 and go through a simulation, now we were faced with, how will this translate to an online environment? And so for myself, I spent untold hours scrolling through YouTube. I became very adept at Google research and YouTube research, looking for videos of simulations, and so found a lot of material out there that other schools had shared from their simulation programs, and then figuring out, okay, how do we get the students to watch this? What kind of an assignment are we going to create that will validate that they've watched it and learned what we want them to learn? And of course, the ever-present Zoom challenges, and discovering not only what a breakout room was, but how to create them and how do you get them out once you put them in there. So those were some of the more humorous challenges that we had to overcome.
Yeah, I think that we all had that misconception that you can get your face-to-face class and put it online and it will be the same, and it's not, it doesn't work. So I think the trainings helped me completely redesign a more online proper way that was not my face-to-face, but as with the same quality, but completely different assignments, and rethinking on grading and how to proper engage the students in online and keep them engaged and excited about the material when you're not together. And especially, I think the contact between instructor and student, and the course does give a lot of ideas on how to increase that.
I'd like to go next if I could.
Go ahead, Brian.
Sure. I think I spoke over someone when I was introducing myself, so I didn't want to do that again. I found that, when the pandemic hit, went straight to Zoom at the same hours of class. But then last fall, I went asynchronous with all my courses. And I found that the training helped quite a bit in terms of setting up discussions. I found that discussions have been probably the most valuable way to gauge whether they are actually learning the material that I'm getting across to them, because what I do is I usually do weekly discussions where I preview something I'm going to ask them as part of an essay. I teach history, and so I have essay questions on my exams, and I can catch things that they're misinterpreting when I respond to them, and they'll talk to each other and they'll actually point things out to each other, and that way they avoid the kinds of things that they might do at exam time when they don't have full understanding. And in a way, it's actually almost better in the online format because everyone has to participate in the discussion for part of the grade. When you're in the classroom face-to-face situation, there's always some people that just won't talk. You could call on them to make them uncomfortable and so forth. But this way, everybody does it. So I get a sense of what everybody thinks and how much they understand what's going on. And I really feel that the training helped in how I can design those questions and how I can respond to them effectively.
Right. Yeah. So we're going to move on to our next question here. Were there any concerns, fears, or hesitancy that you had before starting the trainings? And if so, were the trainings able to address some of those concerns? And what would you say to those who might have similar concerns? Go ahead, Stacy.
Okay, so I am unlike Max or Jason. I had never taken an online class, and I never wanted to be an online teacher. Though I've known some people in this discussion today, and they know that I am a face-to-face person and I want to be with people. And so I was scared. I didn't know anything. I had only used Canvas to record attendance because it was a beautiful luxury. I would post grades and I would use announcements like, hey, class is canceled. So I was not a Canvas person. So I was actually really fearful. So, but the thing is like after maybe the first couple of weeks, maybe not even that long, I started to realize, okay, Stacy, like this is going to be okay. And I even thought, like, what are they even going to teach me? I don't think I teach public speaking, by the way. So I'm like, now I got to do speeches online and group online, and it has its own, hurdles too, like Kevin with guitar, because we didn't want individualized speeches where they just go record themselves or edit it over and over, because that's not real life to giving a speech in the classroom. And so I had my own hurdles, but I'm not going to lie. Once I jumped in and I became a little bit vulnerable, then I learned so much from my peers. And Christina was amazing. She was our instructor. She was amazing she would respond to me sometimes with even in minutes of me asking a question, or I'm like, I don't get it, or what is this summative, or what's the difference? And I did feel overwhelmed, even though I felt like I should have known some of this stuff. But everybody was so kind. Nobody was like, Stacy, shouldn't you know that? Like, you're a part of a generation that should be tech savvy. Nobody judged me negatively that I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't have a bit emoji. I didn't know how to make a button. I didn't know how to do a lot of things. But I learned. And now my Canvas classes are extremely organized. I'm also the person that has become like a module queen. Like, they have to complete in a certain order. They have to complete all. They're always in the same order. And so I feel like I actually learned way more than I ever expected. I feel confident now as an online teacher because of this training. I have learned from my peers. Like, even I was in a cohort with Kevin Cooper, and I was like, I love how you did that. I never thought of that. And so just all of that. But then here's the other thing. So here's the big full circle for me. I had never taken an online class. So I had no idea what my students were experiencing, but it put me right in that position to be like, this is how my students feel. Right. And so now my empathy for them and care for them, and the fact that I have slowed down processes that I might have done in one class might happen over 2 weeks in some modules. And my students are actually performing better than they probably even would have performed if we had been face to face, and it's happening online. So I was the exception. I had no experience, and now I feel very confident. So
I think I can confidently say you are not the exception being a facilitator. I've heard the same story from a lot of our instructors who have gone through the full DE certification, who have not taken online classes before. And I think that's one of the things that's really cool about the certification is that you're totally right. It puts you in that position of being an online student for the first time if you've never done that before.
I'm the same boat. I never took an online course before, and the only thing I used for Canvas was about the same. And I would just post like files in there. Now I discover pages exist, and you can actually make a much better Canvas. But my concern before starting special DE certification was time, because while you're taking the DE certification, I was creating first time my courses on Canvas, and I was like, I'm not going to have time to book both, and I think that was my major concern. But as I was doing the certification, actually everything, I learned so much. Even when you think the boot camp, so I know this, you always learn something new that we can use, and with the other faculty as well, because we're seeing each other and give each other idea. And it actually helped to create why I was doing both. And I think what Jason said before, because we all done once, that helped a lot with time for the online certification. I think if I had never done online, like we were forced to do, it would be more work, because now we have to first time create an assignment. Now we've done some of those steps. So I think it facilitated doing the DE certification now and having some assignments I can use and modify to the way we should be doing. So that helped for me.
I had a similar concern as Simone. I was afraid that I wouldn't have the time or the energy to devote to the class that I, to get the most out of it. But the facilitator that I had was fantastic. Always answering my questions like good. And then the due dates were a little bit flexible. So sometimes when I needed an extra day or two, then that was okay. So that made me feel it relaxed me. So as long as I didn't procrastinate too much, I was able to do it. So if anyone's thinking about doing it, you should definitely do it. And it also gave me I had taken some online courses before, not like full on courses, but like professional development courses, that were online. So I had a little bit of experience there. But being in an online course at that time gave me a renewed appreciation for what the students were going through, like Stacy said, right? Like I was trying to absorb so much information in such a short period of time, and that's exactly what our students do every day, right? So.
Yeah, it's true. It's a way to see as a student. I agree with you.
I had been using Canvas. I was an old school Blackboard user, and so when Canvas came into being, I kind of ended up teaching myself Canvas because I was adjunct at the time. And so I'd been using Canvas and was a big advocate of both Canvas and Blackboard for my courses. And so when the pandemic hit, I thought, oh, easy peasy. I'm already using Canvas. My course is already set up. And then I hit a huge wall when I realized that there is a huge difference between a Canvas site that's built for a course that you're teaching face-to-face and Canvas that's built for a course that you're going to be teaching online. And I didn't realize how many components, how many moving parts how many that I had, and how many of those moving parts were now unnecessary and rendered obsolete in an online course. And so I learned so much about just course design, and I really got to see what my course was like from the student perspective. And so for me, I feel it's made me a better instructor and a better designer when I kind of think through, okay, this sounds great in my head. What's it going to look like once I construct it. And so things have become much easier to navigate, I think, in my course.
All right, awesome. Thank you for this. Our third question for today. The DE certification trainings and bootcamp sessions are advertised to help with your online courses. However, some instructors have noted that they plan to carry some of these new skills to their face-to-face courses as well. Were there any skills that you learned during the trainings that you specifically think helped your face-to-face courses as well? And I think, Simone, you said you wanted to answer this question.
Well, everybody can help here, but I think Canvas is completely different from my very first face-to-face before COVID and now, and definitely I will never go back to what I used to be. First, I discovered Pages exist, so you can actually create something much nicer than just throwing files and don't explaining why they're there. So yes, even face-to-face, I plan to have the same style as I'm doing now, a little bit different, of course, but now I try to organize per week, maybe later we'll be organizing modules per chapter or something like that. But I think the orientation modules, I never had that, and having that first 10 minutes, or even the week before they're going to start the class and have an orientation, what to expect from the course is something that will carry on, that I learn in these courses, and I will carry on to my face-to-face. When I'm presenting lectures now, I have so many more resources that I found that I use as my additional resources. They are definitely going to be able to use that later on and help them even more. Because before it was just me in the class teaching, that's it. When they go home, either there or not, but now they have all this additional to supplement what I'm doing in class that I can continue to use. The interaction with students, I can carry on outside the class too. I learned some apps that I can use to increase communication that are definitely going to continue even in face-to-face, because a quick way for them to ask questions even when I'm not in the classroom with them, and even with peer-to-peer. I learned the peer review function, which I love now. And I used to do peer review, like collect papers, switch papers around, get names out, like what it took me hours and hours to do that on paper. And now I'm definitely doing on Canvas switch anonymous for me. I don't have to go through that panic attack that I used to go. And it really, a lot of the functions on Canvas that I didn't know was there for me that I can carry on to my face-to-face. Peer review is one of them. I can continue to use discussions. I could, that's more to Canvas than what I used to use.
Would anyone else like to add to that?
Yeah, I'd like to share a little bit. So, in my face-to-face guitar music courses, we get together in the class sessions and we rehearse our music for an eventual concert. The concert creates this incredible reason to be learning really tedious, sometimes concepts. And then once they do experience that really fun concert, then in the future they realize, okay, there's a point to all of this, all of these concepts. Okay, so then how do you do that online? And you may have seen some of Julie Dana's choral videos or some of these other things where you make sort of a Hollywood Squares or a Brady Bunch style, like Zoom here, video that includes all the folks on there and each playing his or her own part. So figuring out how to generate these things was an interesting challenge, and what I settled upon was making one myself, and then drawing in the my colleague Robert Myers, who teaches guitar classes as well, and then posting this video to Canvas as a sample that the students can practice along with, and that has many benefits, because formerly you might be able to hear the piece emerging in class as everyone gains some skills, and it suddenly become, or no, not suddenly, it eventually becomes something musical. But here the students can see the goal right away because they could see Robert and my video, and then they could play along with it, and we would post it to YouTube so that you could slow it down, so you can play it repeatedly at home, and you can hear all the various gears, how they're working together, and how your part is complementary to the other parts. So I just really feel like I want to, even though it does take time, I want to replicate this in the face-to-face so that they have that awesome resource at home to practice with. because then you can have a little bit of that incentive, a little bit of that motivation earlier, because you see, wow, that's cool. Like I wanna do that. So if you'll allow, I'm gonna share my screen and show you the little before and after vid. Here is the play along video that I made with Robert for a piece called La Sandunga. And I'm proud of this project for a couple of reasons. You know, it came out great musically, but another thing is, okay, La Sandunga, that is a Mexican folk song, and we were able to play it with a famous Mexican guitarist. And I've always wanted to have this person, I knew he was sensational, come to City College, but then suddenly we could have him digitally come, that alleviated a lot of obstacles. And so my students were able to play with this wonderful Mexican guitarist, this role model for many of them. And that was actually kind of made possible by the pandemic, which was cool. All right, so here is the play along video. Please speak up or make wild gestures if you cannot hear it. Okay, so you can hear that at the beginning of the video. Then right after this is the same video, but with a metronome clicking along, so the students can really hear the beat that they're supposed to line up with, which is useful. And then after that is the individual videos of each of those parts. So the different classes were divvied out, who needs to do what. And then you could hear your part totally isolated and practice along with that. So there was just so many ways that the students could interact with this that, you know, now I'm thinking, if I don't do this in the future, you know, I'm going to be missing out. Okay, so then here is the all-student version of the same piece. So there you go. There was my grand finale. That one was from the fall semester, and I think it turned out really well, because then in the end I was able to subtract the teacher parts entirely. So yeah, so the students would layer their parts on top of ours, and then we would just go away. And what was left was the awesome guest artists and the students. And I think we came up with something that they were very proud of. Oh, and then one more thing. It just happened. I did not plan this. I must have done something good in my life to deserve this. We hired this guy, Pablo Garibay is his name, from Mexico. It turns out he's a tech genius. He's very, very savvy with technology. And I did not know that. And so he's like, oh, leave it to me, leave it to me. And then he streams this part of like his concert, some solo pieces, like just like seamlessly. And I don't know, you could tell like his camera was like amazing and his like background and everything just totally wonderful. So that was an unexpected bonus to this event that took place last fall.
That is awesome, Kevin. Yeah, super amazing. Yeah, great job to you, your department, the students. Amazing, especially during a pandemic. Yes, thank you so much. The next question that we have for our panelists is, interaction in an online course is important to build that sense of community among students and with the instructors. So what are some methods that you have incorporated into your course to increase that engagement, student to student and between instructor to student? Simone or Max, feel free to answer. Yeah.
Yeah, so I've done a number of things, but just one simple one I want to share because it's so obvious and I guess took me a long time to finally catch on. I think I learned this in the trainings. Was I was having a problem with discussions of students logging in. They'd post their original response to the prompt, and then to do their discussion, they would just find some other posts and do their discussion post. And I would track, the time and the dates, and they would just not log back into the discussion. And that's not a discussion, really. That's not a back and forth. So I'm going to, moving forward, do the obvious thing of requiring replies to be submitted on a different date than the initial prompt, and hopefully that will get a bit more engagement. Another thing that I started as a result of the training was to do peer reviews. And I have been really surprised, I think, at how positive that's been for the students. There are always a few students who don't get good reviews from their peers. The way I do it, I require them to give comments on the draft itself. In Canvas, you can use a rubric, but I require them to do comments on the draft. And most of the students in their feedback after the course mention the peer reviews as being transformative for their own experience, to be able to read their peers' writing and both give feedback and receive feedback.
I think I have a similar experience with the peer review, although my students did not like it. But I think it's not because of the peer review, it was mostly because they had to do the same, go into the Word file and add their comments. And I think it was the more technology fear that they had, mostly not the peer review, but I really like and I will continue to do. One thing I want to say to everybody that's thinking about how to increase the communication, try anything, even if you don't be afraid to fail. I think I try every single form. Some were horrible at the end, some worked really well. For discussions, I try group discussion, I try the whole class discussion, graded, optional, everything you can think of. I done group work, asynchronous. I tried with synchronous class. The asynchronous was a disaster. The synchronous worked really well. So really try and error. I done one thing for me that worked the best, but not all instructors might like this. I use an app that actually Jason introduced to me called Discord. And to me, that was one of the students' favorite last 2 semesters, because it's an app in which it's almost like a text message between you and your students and the students with other students that you can see, that doesn't share your phone number, which for me was important. But any time of the day they're studying, pop-ups a question, they send that in the app. And if I can answer immediately, some other student already answer. So they're helping each other. Seeing they posted things 1 a.m. Of course, I'm sleeping, and some other students are awake and they answer each other. So that increased a lot, the contact between the students in the class, help each other. Sometimes they didn't understand, how do I answer this? They will post on that. And with me too, although to me felt almost like a 24/7 service, like all day long answering students. But I send announcements on that app, and I will also reminders, tomorrow is this assignment due. So they really like that because they're taking 20 different classes online. They forget assignments. And I think that was a way to increase my communication with them. So I use all forms, email, Discord. I give them the option if they don't want to use the app, of course. The discussion boards, I use group work, peer review, plus email. I always send one on Monday, one on Friday, beginning of the week, end of the week kind of thing. So I think that increased a lot participation between me, right, and the students and students with other students.
Thank you. Stacy, you had your hand up.
Yes, I'll make this real fast because I know we need to keep moving. But one of the things that I did that has actually worked out fantastic, and I do it in all of my classes. So first, I teach group class. So in group class, you need to put the students in groups. So they're assigned to a groups. But I decided no matter which subject I'm teaching, interpersonal, public speaking, they're all assigned to a group. And so I kind of think about it like when we're on campus, face-to-face, you don't talk to the whole class. You don't respond to the whole class's discussions. Like most often you sit next to a few people, you exchange phone numbers, you get to know those people. And if you're sick, you go to them. And so I've tried to recreate that the best that I could in my Canvas by assigning everyone to a learning group of like 4, 5, 6 people, depending on how large my class is. I encourage them to exchange phone number, and then they do their weekly discussions with that group of people versus the whole class. And my students have found that they absolutely love that instead of like trying to like surf through like, 30, 40, 50 comments to find something to respond to, they grow a sense of community and comfort with those 5 people. They start to get to know each other, and it's just worked out really, really well. And so I highly recommend if you've only done whole class discussions, maybe this semester, try some small group discussions and try to build that community with them.
All right, awesome. Thank you. All right, so the next question we have for our panelists is, when it comes to presenting your content to students in a way that will make sense and provide easy navigation, what techniques do you use, or what is your thought process to organizing? And Max, I believe you said you wanted to speak on this.
Yeah, one of my top takeaways from the online teaching was a shift from viewing the Canvas shell as, because mostly I used it with my face-to-face classes, but even with the online classes I taught, viewing it from kind of a storage rack for content to the backbone of a whole experience. Viewing it more like a website. If you're designing a website, that you think about how they come in and then leading students through. And that happens in a face-to-face course. There's all the content, but then there's the professor to kind of fill in the gaps. And so that's what I really worked on with my online classes. And I want to show you a few things that I did. I'll share my screen here. So one of the changes that I made was really improve the framing. So to do this, I beefed up my unit overview pages and added a summary page for each unit and then a finished page. So the unit overview page looks like this. So I would always introduce the content, but more in the lecture rather than having a page dedicated to it. So I added some banners that kind of give some gravitas to the topic and a bit of a reflection of me. And I have the objectives and then assignments. I have a similar structure on each unit overview page. And then I have a summary. This was new also, emphasizing the key points, because you can't say things, you can't repeat them enough. And I was reminded of that as a student going through a course, how helpful repetition is. And then the finish page, I just use the same finish page for each module right now, which is not optimal, but it gives an overview of how long they can expect to wait. So the framing, that was one thing. Another thing that I've improved is content chunking. So my assignments tend to be they tend to be long because I like to provide a lot of detail, because as a student, I like a lot of detail, but that can be overwhelming. So I've worked on improving that by adding some boxes here with the objectives, adding some colored headings, And I've been experimenting with the tabbed content here, which I think really helps break up the content to make it a little more digestible. And then the last thing I want to say is assignment reminders. So I copied this table. I found this in one of the online teaching modules that I took and really liked it. A table at the beginning of each unit that gives them a preview of the assignments, and they can click through to the assignments if they want. And I think that's been beneficial. And then I learned this from Jason, masterful idea, which is to create a dummy assignment for follow-up deadlines. So this happens with discussion. So for example, in week 2, I have a discussion, but I have one deadline where I want them to post a reply to the prompt. And then I want them to come back and submit replies. So the original post is due by Sunday, and then the replies are due by Wednesday, but you can't put 2 deadlines into an assignment component. So I asked them to put it on their calendars, but that's tough. So what Jason recommended is create a dummy assignment. This is what mine looks like. And I put it in the next week because that's where they're going to encounter the date. And that just links them back to the original form. And that way the deadline for their assignment will show up in their Canvas calendar, and they'll get reminded of it that way. So those are a few improvements that I've made to my course.
Awesome. Thank you, Max.
That's impressive. I think kind of fitting what Max said, the best thing is being consistent. I think that's what the students like. So my week 1 all the way to 18, that has exactly the same format. So they get used to one way and they can continue with the organization. It helps a lot. So similarly to your course, I have for every week, I have my introduction, which I show what they're going to accomplish that week. Lecture materials, lab materials, assignments due that week. So tab with all the assignments, and then end of the week checkpoint. So they check to watch lecture videos, lab videos, to do these assignments. So every week is exactly the same, and they really liked the consistency.
Thank you. I just checked the time out. It's going fast. So I'm going to move on to the next question here. Part 2 of DE certification is focused on communication, and the boot camp sessions that we offer also focus on teacher-student and student-student communication. Participating in these opportunities have they help to increase communication in your courses, and how so?
Hi. I always want to say that I think the 10-10-10 communication part was my favorite part of the DE training, because I had never really thought about it that way, but that idea that the first 10 minutes of what the students experience when they click into your class for the first time, like really sets the tone for the whole thing, right? And that made so much sense to me, and then the other 3 10s are like, 10 hours and then 10 days. But so like trying to take my class and create an initial experience that made them feel welcome and encouraged and capable of doing what was in front of them, I think has made a big difference for my students.
Thank you, Kelly. Max?
Yeah, so I just want to mention something. In our online teaching, I recall a spirited discussion about whether instructors should participate in the discussion forums with their students. And I was kind of surprised how many of my colleagues thought, no, they shouldn't. And the rationale was often things like not wanting to intrude on the conversation, not wanting to dominate the conversation, and that sort of thing. My view is that what we should be aspiring to as teachers is to know how to shape conversation in a constructive way where we are engaging without dominating. We face that challenge in face-to-face just as much as online. And I remember that as a student, it meant a huge amount to me if an instructor actually replied to my post. And that's what I do in my own classes. And I've seen the same thing with my students in the after-class evaluations. They'll say how much of an impact it had just to be responded to. So what I've been doing in my discussions is making the rubric very simple, so I can spend minimal time on grading which usually results in a more generous grade. And I'm fine with that. And that gives me the time to engage person to person. And I find that to be effective.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for sharing, Jason.
Yeah, so we're going to go ahead and go on to the next question.
Oh, Brian, go ahead, Brian.
No, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say real quick, one of the things that I noticed is you have to work hard at getting them to respond to each other substantively, because there's a lot of times where they'll just go, hey, that's a great post, or it's crazy how well you understand this stuff, or something along those lines. And to point out to them, okay, try to work with what they said. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Is there something you can add? I think that's important too.
Yeah, and as an instructor, we can actually model that. And that's another good reason, I think, to participate.
I had pretty good luck with my discussions when I would do them sort of like a writing lab. And one of the things in music class is to write concert reports. And it can be easy for them to be superficial. So I work hard with the students to get them to think descriptively and to really to describe the whole piece, beginning, middle, end. Use vocabulary from class. Use original adjectives, right? There's all these different facets of a really good musical description. So through discussions, the students could write these samples, just a paragraph or so, about pieces, and I could do different kinds of pieces. I would start with this Mexican artist, Natalie Lafourcade, and it's this awesome piece that everyone in the class loves, and it kind of gets things rolling. And then it forces critical thinking, because after they write their paragraph, they have to respond to a peer, and sometimes I'll say, commend the peer on something that he or she included that you neglected. And I've noticed that they like this better. Because then in a different discussion, I might say, critique a peer constructively, finding something that could improve his or her paragraph. And in my class, they were reluctant to do that. They really preferred to commend somebody else on something that they included that you neglected. So like I said, it requires a little critical thinking, because you have to know, what yours might be missing, and then recognize it in someone else's. And I just thought it was super effective, and it helped create that, that learning community, a little bit of a rapport that can be very difficult to do online.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. All right, I'm going to skip ahead questions a little bit. And so I'm going to go to what we have on for the panel and see what have. This is question 9. What would you say or suggest to anyone who may be considering pursuing DE certification?
Definitely do it. Not only, you can say after COVID, I'll never teach online. Even if you never want to teach online, you're going to learn so much that you can carry on to your face-to-face in whatever format classes you prefer. I learned a lot with other faculty, not only from our, whoever is our, how we call, giving the course, but the course per se, but with the faculty too, because we are sharing ideas, and you get to know people outside your own department that we don't get to meet, and see their perspective that's sometimes completely different, and nice ideas, and do it. Okay, try. I think it's a great timing to do it, since you've done some of those online courses, so you can build into that. Don't be afraid of the time. You could do, like they say, they're pretty flexible to help with us in our own schedule. We learn a lot, we meet people, learn new skills, and learn how to use Canvas better, and we can become better instructors for our students as well.
Ditto to everything she just said.
I agree 110%. I'm always learning something new every time I take one of the boot camp classes, or even just in this format here. I've been making notes of everything, and became wide-eyed when I saw Max's Canvas course, and my wheels started turning. So you'll learn things that are applicable, not just as a DE for a DE course, but even for your face-to-face courses.
I just want to say, I think the facilitation was A+. It was very personal, very different from just some generic training. It was, I was worried about it being just another training, but it was well worth the time I spent.
And you always receive really positive feedbacks. Was always very positive from peers and the facilitators as well. That's the word I was looking for, facilitator.
All right. So that's all the questions that we're going to ask for now. I do want to give some time for the audience members to be able to ask questions to our panelists. So if anyone has any questions that they would like to ask, feel free to either raise your hand or unmute yourselves. Oh, no questions?
We're close to lunchtime.
I see. Yeah, everyone's
How
doing
about
their
something?
DoorDash.
Somebody might want to know, do you have to take all 3 of the trainings in succession immediately? Which would be, what, 8 weeks in a row of training? Do they have to do that?
So that's a good question, Tammy. And so the training is broken into those several parts. You do not have to take them in succession. And so, like, let's say, for instance, you take part 1 and you want to take a couple of weeks break before you come to part 2. You're absolutely able to do that. I think right now we're planning on rolling our certification courses on a 2-week basis. And so every 2 weeks, we'll have another certification course going. When you go onto the virtual hub for faculty, in fact, Sue, do you want to share that? If you open up that page, I can talk about it. On the virtual hub for faculty, we'll have the interest forms for the DE certifications. And so you can go in there and sign up, show that you have interest in our certification, and we will contact you in order to get you into a cohort and get you started. And so
even if I could just jump in, even if you have gone through the these topics before, you're welcome to take them at any time. They're not limited. And I just want to say that I feel privileged that I was able to see what some of you all have done. It just kudos to all of you for making the best of the last year and taking it and transitioning it to be so meaningful for yourselves and for your students. I'm just beyond impressed with everybody on this panel. So thank you for all that you're doing and for being willing to share it with us too. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And no, yeah, and I absolutely want to echo that as well. When we sent out a call for panelists for this session, we had to turn people away. We had too many people say that, hey, yeah, we want to share what we got out of these certifications and out of this bootcamp session. In fact, I see some of the names in the audience here, and I'm happy to see that. And so absolutely thank you for volunteering to be a part of this workshop, and seeing what you guys created is awesome. And so when you go into the virtual hub for faculty in the workshops and certification area, you'll see the certifications are listed near the bottom of the page, and the interest forms are working there. We are doing the certifications throughout the semester. And so if this is something that you would like to take during your courses, by all means, feel free to fill out one of those interest forms. Sue just dropped the link into the chat right now. Diana, you had a question.
Oops. Sorry. Oh, sorry. Yes. Are we going to get a new sandbox?
That's a Jody question.
Yeah, we've talked about that because of so many things that have changed, right? So yeah, we're looking at how do we do that? One idea was to create the sandbox in Canvas Commons, so that folks can go and grab it from Canvas Commons. And then when we do updates, it's kind of like a blueprint sandbox. So when we would do updates to that one, it would populate into the others versus, building a sandbox and scrapping it, every couple of years. So in exploring that unique aspect, we're a little bit behind on doing that part. But
Okay.
I was on our roadmap.
I was just wondering because my sandbox is just so full of all these wonderful ideas that I didn't know where to put. And so I throw them all there. And then when I saw that we were getting possibly a new one, will that take away the old one, or what will happen with that one?
Boy, that's a really good question. It sounds like it shouldn't. In hearing from you, it sounds like it shouldn't.
I hope not.
We never want to, pull anyone's content or, cause a fright when something's not visible. And I think that happened when when the district made us switch to terms, and a lot of courses seemingly disappeared on the homepage or on the dashboard, and actually they are concluded. So just to let you know that anytime you can't find something, even if it did go missing, we can always retrieve it. So if we were going to transition, Diana, we would definitely send out messaging and give folks time to transfer over stuff before we archived the course. But if, it's good to hear from you about how you would want to save that content and then some other new content. So
yeah, because sometimes you get these great ideas about something, but it doesn't really pertain to what you're doing at the time, and you don't know where to put it, because I don't want to put it in the class because I'm afraid I might accidentally, I don't know, open it or it get mixed up with my other stuff, but you just want to keep it for future use. And so that's what I've been doing. I've been just creating all this content in that one sandbox.
yeah, and if it helps too, we are releasing a form where you can request a shell, that you can request a shell in Canvas. So that might be the place to do that for the sandbox. I'm kind of thinking out loud here, but any feedback, I appreciate that, that we may need some more space for faculty.
And I just wanted to say that I loved what you said, Kevin, about, how your ideas grew by having to teach online on how to create that collaboration, because I've found that the same thing has happened in my classes. And I think that I'm a better teacher for teaching online. And I really have loved the online thing because it just has opened up. It's almost like when you have less or something, you become more creative in a weird way. You try to think of other avenues that you might not have ever thought of in your more conventional setting. And, I think that's really cool what you did. It's pretty exciting.
Thank you for that. Yeah, it's absolutely true. And then with the peers, so you haven't taken the training yet, or have you, Diana?
Yeah, I've taken the training a couple times. I actually did it twice. Just because I did it way back in 2014. I think I was one of the first, with Tammy, I was one of the first to go through the training initially. And so I was already trained before the pandemic. So it wasn't really a big transition for me. But then I found that because things were changing and new things were coming, that I just felt like I needed to maybe have some kind of refreshers. So there wasn't really a refresher. So I just did it again.
That's actually why my hand is raised. So Jason, you could lower it, is to say that Diana is a good example that if you got decertified quite some time ago, taking the training again will only benefit. It's so overwhelming the first time that you take it. And so when you take it again, it's kind of like reading a book a second time or watching a movie a second time. You pick up new information. that either you didn't pay much attention to before, or because it's new and updated ed code or new and updated, teaching strategies. So I don't know how many are in here that got DE certified forever ago. Actually, Diana and I were in certification, the original ones together, and becoming a facilitator of these DE trainings has made me a better trainer, because as I went through learning, what I had to walk through my cohorts with, I was like, oh, I forgot about that, or I didn't realize, and my classes have changed. And Jason would probably say the same thing. It's done nothing but positive, had positive effects on our classes.
Thank you.
I-
Simone, you had your hand up.
I
as
was
well.
just gonna add about the sandbox. Somehow I ended up with 2 sandbox before the pandemics, and they never were taken away. One didn't disappear. I still have both. So I think that just let you know that that didn't disappear. And it's extremely helpful actually to have both of them. So the fact that once Jody was asking, it really helps organizational ideas for different courses.
Awesome. Is there any more questions or anything else anyone would like to add?
One thing to add is don't be afraid to try. It might fail, but it might be a great idea. You just have to try it.
And actually that's a great point to bring up. If you start the certification and say like, okay, once you get a look at everything and say, oh, you know what, this is too much, I need to put this off to later. That's totally fine too. It's not a one thing fail and not ever, you can never go back again. If you're even just on the edge of wanting to come and try out the DE certification, sign up for the interest form. Come see what it looks like. If you decide that you need to reschedule it for later on, we can arrange that. It's not a problem at all.
And I just,
a shameless plug for our later session. We're going to go over some of the workshops that we have that include the learning objectives. And those are like small bites, right? That cover parts of the rubric that are just kind of an intro, that once you're in certification, you will be able to go over that part a little more quickly because you already have experimented with it. So shameless.
and I don't know, we're at 12:15 right now, but I do want to thank all of our panelists today. Thank you so much for participating and your willingness to share, how you structure and teach your courses. Thank you so much. And to all the faculty that we reached out to that also wanted to be part of a panelist, we thank you so much for your willingness to collaborate with us and share your ideas and stories. And I just want to thank all faculty members, especially within the past year and a half or so, when we were moved to online teaching. It was stressful, it was hard, but we're in a better place than we were before, and that's because of your hard work and dedication to student success. And so I just hope that you have a wonderful semester. And that we are here to support you. If you have any questions, reach out to us in the virtual hub for faculty. You see your colleagues on the panelists here too as well. So feel free to reach out to them as well too for any direction that you may need. But thank you so much to everybody who joined us today, to our interpreters, to Beth Ann as well, Jason and Jody. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for coming all. Have a good lunch.
Thanks, everyone.